Part 48. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 472. The soul-suppressing lock is trembling. Yumi Oxwin's expression suddenly changed slightly. Controlling two chains at the same time, her perception was obviously more acute. But soon, the violent trembling of the soul-suppressing lock spread throughout the 8 chains. Not only her, Yan Xian and other goddesses also felt the same. The trembling of the soul-suppressing lock began to become more intense. Its turbulent momentum is like a raging beast imprisoned under the abyss. When it breaks out of the ground, there is no power to limit it. Bang! The 8 chains tightened suddenly, like a sword being drawn out of its sheath, and they made trembling sounds one after another. Although the 7 people used all their strength, they gradually became unable to support themselves. How is that possible? At this moment, Yumi Aoxian, who had always seemed confident of winning, finally showed a look of consternation that could not be concealed. Because she knew very well how powerful the restraint of the 8-lock soul suppression was. The 8-lock soul suppressing method is one of the most mysterious underworld methods in the 9 Netherworld Palace, and only the goddesses of the past generations are qualified to inherit it. These seemingly simple 8 chains are actually far from being as simple as an ordinary magic weapon. The 8 chains can penetrate directly through the body and firmly lock the soul. Once entangled by the 8-lock soul suppressing method, the 3 souls and 7 souls will have nowhere to escape and will be tightly entangled and locked. When the soul is restricted, even the strongest person cannot exert his strength. In the impression, there was once a powerful emperor who was locked by the 8 soul-suppressing souls. Even with all his strength, he couldn't break free. He could only watch helplessly as his soul was torn into pieces by 5 horses, locked tightly under the restraints of 8 chains, and finally crushed completely. Although the person in front of him is strong, he is only at the peak of the emperor realm. Even the powerful Emperor Zun can't break through the restriction. What is he doing? Controlling the 2 chains with all his strength, Yumi Aoxian tried to speak to comfort the others. Don't worry, no matter how weird his power is, it can only last a little longer. As long as... But before the voice could finish, she suddenly felt an extremely hot heat spreading up her palms. The painful burning sensation almost made her let go of the chains in her hands. At the same time, although it was completely unable to imprison Nai Chen firmly, the 8 soul-suppressing locks that were still not under much pressure actually began to tremble violently. Huh! The flames followed the chain and the 7 people's hands were immediately engulfed. When their eyes focused on Nai Chen, their expressions seemed to be stunned at the same moment. The aura on Nai Chen's body was rising steadily at this moment. Bang! Along with the chain's trembling sound, which was like a mournful cry, lines as hot as magma appeared on Nai Chen's arms. In his eyes, there was also an increasingly bright golden light. The first channel of the Suangu holy body was opened, and the extremely yin energy in the second channel was also floating faintly. Even the space seemed to be heavy at this moment. But then, the third channel, the fourth channel. Behind Nai Chen, the 7th pattern that had never appeared before also appeared at this moment. A day's ordinary life as a mortal finally led to an epiphany in the imperial realm, allowing Nai Chen to successfully open the 7th channel of the Suangu holy body overnight. Click, click. 1 way, 2 ways. Every chain actually trembled violently and almost uncontrollably at the same time. The 8 chains suddenly shrank. When Nai Chen stretched out his arm, grabbed 2 of the chains and moved them slightly. The 8 tight chains seemed to be finally unable to resist this power. The flames roared up, and the scorching heat almost gave people a fear that they were about to melt. The fire lotus bloomed and swept in all directions, roaring like a beast. The power of the emperor that loomed in the air had increased countless times in the blink of an eye. The majesty rolled up and moved like an overwhelming force. The extremely strong hurricane was tearing at the center, and 8 chains were being included in it. Click, Click. Bang. Without any warning, the 8 chains reached their limit at the same time. Suddenly, and shattered. As the chains broke, the 7 people who had no reaction at all took a few steps back under the influence of inertia, almost staggering and falling. The blazing flames swept over them, forcing them to quickly put their hands in front of them, trying to block the heat wave on the shop floor. In just a blink of an eye, the vast sky has been dyed red. The whole sky seemed to be burning in flames. Yumioxwin's eyes narrowed fiercely. The cloth on the arms of the figure who walked out of the flames had already burned to pieces. Only hot and golden lines like magma flowed on the exposed arms. He actually broke free of the soul-suppressing lock. This ancient pattern is. As early as the first time he met Nai Chen, Yu Miaoxian felt something unusual about him. And it was judged that this person must have an absolutely extraordinary physique. But she never expected that the holy body Nai Chen was carrying was, the ancient holy body. Compatible with the holy body of the world, the 8 meridians cut across the eternal mystery. This unparalleled holy body has not been seen for an unknown amount of time. I didn't expect that I would actually see it with my own eyes today. She really wanted to bring the holy body back to the 9 netherworld mansion to accelerate Lord Hades' plan. But Suangu holy body was not among them. Because this holy body is simply not within their control. Not only does he have the Xiangu saint body, but he has also opened up the 7 meridians. What's wrong with this person? Not good. Although he is at the level of the great emperor, after opening up the 7 meridians, the power he exerts is even enough to rival the emperor. If this continues, even we can't compete with him. Yu Miaoxian made a panicked voice for the first time. We must join forces, and we must use the power of the entire Holy Lotus Mountain. The 7 people's expressions became solemn and serious at the same time, not daring to slack off. Everyone's body was shining at the same time, reaching the sky and falling into the blue sea. At the same time, the only 7 remaining Holy Lotus Mountains were also summoned, reflecting strange colors. The light that illuminated the world all gathered towards Yu Miaoxian alone. She was suspended in the air, her long hair fluttering, and even the golden armor on her body was trembling. The sword in her hand condensed the power of the 7 goddesses and even the Holy Lotus Mountain. Keng. The sword energy suddenly increased, as if it could tear the sky apart. A glimmer of hope finally blossomed in Yu Miaoxwin's eyes, and she murmured with some joy. Yes, with this kind of power, even the Xiangu saint body. But at this moment, what she saw in front of her was only Nai Chen stretching out a hand calmly. In an instant, an identical golden giant palm emerged from the sky. Almost, covered the entire sky. The 7th meridian opened by the Xiangu saint body actually allowed Nai Chen's Dharma image to merge with his body. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 473. Is this really, the power that can be exerted by the Huading realm? Looking up at the sky, Yu Miaoxian actually showed a fear she had never had before. The golden giant palm almost completely covered the sky. Compared with it, the 7 of them, even the power exerted by the 7 Holy Lotus Mountains, seemed insignificant. Is that the Dharma image? No, there is clearly a power connected to him in this Dharma image. Yu Miaoxian poured all her strength into the sword that stabbed into the sky. The sword light was so bright that it even exerted the power that they had not been able to exert many times before. But the more they exerted their strength, the more they felt how insignificant they were compared to that power. The overwhelming golden palm prince crushed down, and compared with it, the sword energy condensed by the 7 people's strength seemed insignificant. In just an instant, the sword energy completely stagnated. It was like facing a towering and immovable mountain, unable to shake it at all. Not good. Yu Miaoxwin's face showed fear. She knew very well what the consequences would be if the palm print crushed down. Not only them, but even the entire Holy Lotus Mountain would be wiped out? She suddenly glanced at the other 6 goddesses around her, and a decisive coldness suddenly appeared in her eyes. Raising her hand again, a scarlet blood pattern spread in the palm of Yumioxwen's hand. No one noticed that even her eyes were filled with an extremely strange blood color. And this chilling blood color was very similar to the breath of the dragon blood formation that caused the imperial mausoleum of Lanchuan continent to fall into chaos. A touch of blood appeared on the sword energy without any sign. In just a moment, the power seemed to have been greatly improved. Bursts of blood-colored aftermath spread to the surroundings, and the fishy smell made people feel sick. Sister Miaoxian. But as the power of the sword energy grew, the expressions of Yan Xian and other goddesses suddenly changed drastically. They were horrified to find that strange blood-colored lines were spreading rapidly from their palms at a terrifying speed. Not only did they devour their arms in the blink of an eye, but they also quickly moved towards their bodies, limbs, and even the heads on their necks. Wherever the blood lines passed, they immediately felt as if their strength had been drained. Their skin and flesh withered immediately, and even their vitality was rapidly draining away at a speed visible to the naked eye. Their spiritual power, cultivation, and even their youth and life were constantly being drained. Yan Xian stared at Yu Miaoxian, but even her voice sounded withered and old. They suddenly realized that Yu Miaoxian was constantly draining their vitality and providing it to the sword energy that gathered the power of 7 people. Several goddesses were horrified, and they trusted each other. They even gathered their power into Yu Miaoxwen's hands without any doubt and let her control it. But they never expected that Yu Miaoxian would not hesitate to consume their lives in order to survive. The 6 people were terrified and tried desperately to resist. But the blood-colored lines on their bodies had already become extremely powerful after absorbing their power. As goddesses, each of them knew what this strange taboo formation that no one outside knew meant, and what kind of strength it had. They had completely lost the power to resist the blood formation. Yan Xian tried to beg with a withered and old voice full of begging. Sister Miaoxian, don't, you can't do this. They didn't even have the strength to stand, so the 6 people had to kneel down, barely maintaining the last bit of strength in their bodies, begging. Sorry, if only one person can survive, then I just want to choose myself. However, Yu Miaoxian just had a crazy look. Not only did she ignore their pleas, but she also increased the speed at which the blood formation absorbed vitality. She wanted to live, but she knew it was difficult to compete with Nai Chen. So, she adopted this only feasible method. As long as they sacrificed their lives and gathered the strength of 7 people, they would definitely succeed. Lord of the Underworld, I still have to return to Lord of the Underworld. When he comes out of retreat, I must not die here. Even Yu Miaoxwen's smile was a bit crazy. Huh. The surging blood rushed out of the 6 people's bodies and condensed towards the sword energy in the sky. Seeing that the 6 goddesses who were so majestic just now had collapsed to the ground. Not only did their black hair gradually turn white, but their skin also became old and wrinkled at a very fast speed, full of cracks. The once handsome face had turned into an old woman who was almost dying. Their eyes were full of hatred and despair, but it was useless. The sword energy that drained the blood of the 6 people was very strong. Countless withered skulls appeared on the surface of the sword. They screamed and wailed. They tried to break free in agony, but it was useless. The shrill wailing sound continued to echo, the blood was everywhere, and the sword seemed to be full of forbidden and strange power. Yu Miaoxian finally showed a glimmer of hope in her eyes, and she looked at the sword piercing the sky with expectation. Maybe. But in just a moment, her only hope was completely shattered. The golden giant palm enveloped it, and the sword energy that seemed to be filled with countless forbidden powers failed to produce any effect that Yu Miaoxian expected. Just like the ants under his feet, like the ghosts seeing the sun, there was no power to resist at all. Boom! The blood sword dissipated like clouds and smoke, and the golden palm print slowly fell, without even a moment's pause. Lord of the underworld, Lord of the underworld, save me. Yumi Oxwin's eyes were filled with crazy begging. Unfortunately, her voice did not receive any response at all. All Yumi Aoxian could feel was the terrifying oppression that seemed to be enough to crush the world. It was so terrible that it even made people feel suffocated. Finally, her eyes were gradually swallowed by despair. Asshole, all the underworld should return to chaos. Even if you kill us, the day when Lord of the Underworld comes out of seclusion will be your death. Boom. The giant palm fell, but the sound stopped abruptly. Nai Chen retracted his palm, and the light in his eyes gradually returned to normal. But under his feet, on the boundless land, only a huge palm print was left. Such a huge holy lotus mountain was actually razed to the ground by a palm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 474. This, what on earth is this? Seeing that the 8 holy lotus mountains had disappeared, only the site of a huge palm print remained. The ghosts who witnessed the scene all showed expressions of disbelief. Fortunately, they had been afraid of the holy lotus mountain for a long time, and almost all of them hid far away and were not affected. But even so, the scene in front of them still made them feel deeply shocked and afraid. It's even hard to imagine that this is something human beings can do. It seems that all 8 goddesses are dead. Yes, I saw them being crushed under that palm print with my own eyes. Even the holy lotus mountain has been moved to the ground, leaving them with no chance of survival. The cruel and murderous goddess was finally killed, and the ghost who survived should have felt lucky. But at this moment, they still couldn't let go of their worries. After all, the strength of a person who can monopolize 8 goddesses by himself is really terrifying. If he really intends to attack the ghosts here, I'm afraid it will only take a moment. However, just when many ghosts were in shock, they looked at the majestic figure like a god descending into the world with trembling eyes. From the huge palm print, 7 rays of light of different colors suddenly flew out and converged towards Nai Chen. 7 colors shine like neon. It is as hard as gold and stone, as cold as ice, and there is also the faint surging thunder, and the roaring hurricane. At the same time, a crimson source stone appeared in Nai Chen's hand. The moment he saw the 7 origin stones, the flame stone flew towards them as if it had been summoned, and neatly placed itself in the position of the 4th origin stone. The 8 origin stones were originally extremely precious and distributed among all walks of life. Later, it was acquired by Juyu Underworld and deeply implanted into the bodies of the 8 goddesses, giving them the power to access all realms. But now, the 8 origin stones are reunited. It seems that they have not seen the light of day for a long time, and the origin stones have established a mysterious relationship with each other. As Nai Chen stretched out his palm, the 8 origin stones suddenly seemed to be summoned and circled around them to form a circle, moving slowly in the high sky. What's even more strange is that the light on each source stone gradually becomes more and more dazzling. In the condensed halo, a few spots of light slowly fell. These light spots are falling all over the sky like snowflakes, but they are of different colors and beautiful. For a moment, colorful snow seemed to fall on the flat Shenglian mountain. Snowflakes are falling softly, seeming to cover the entire sky and earth. What exactly are these things? Seeing that there was no way to escape, the ghosts on the ground suddenly fell into panic. They tried to escape, not wanting to be touched by the falling snow. But he found that he could not escape from the snowflakes no matter what. Finally, almost all the ghosts were touched by the falling snowflakes, and no one could escape. But when they were originally panicked and worried about what would happen, but they discovered that these colorful snowflakes did not cause any harm to them. Every time a snowflake falls on their souls, it will create ripples like water in the spirit body. Immediately afterwards, the souls of the ghosts who had been injured by the fire of the Holy Lotus Mountain continued to recover in an extremely comfortable feeling, even as immersed in it as drunkenness. They were frightened and had no idea when they would turn into ashes and disappear for so long. The ghosts never thought that this day would come. My spirit body has recovered, I don't have to be in a state of confusion anymore. I thought I wouldn't be able to survive tomorrow, but I didn't expect it. He raised his head and looked at Nai-Chen solemnly, with reverence and gratitude in his eyes. But at this moment, they suddenly noticed. The aperture originally formed by the condensation of the 8 source stones suddenly expanded again, flowing like water in the sky. And as the source stone changed, they were shocked to find that the space around them was shaking violently. The brilliance circulates and visions abound. Many ghosts' memories of their lives that had been forgotten by ghosts kept emerging at this moment. And the home that emerged in their memories actually appeared on the other side of the distorted space. That is the place that every ghost longs for. Because there is the home they miss so much, as well as friends, family, and the love of their life that they will never forget. Although the ghosts have all lost their lives, they all hope to enter the original world and reincarnate. Because as long as this happens, they will have a chance to meet those thoughts again. I originally thought that this wish was out of reach, but I didn't expect. Big brother. At this moment, when I first saw Nai-Chen's ghost and the little girl, I immediately understood what the 8 origin stones were doing. The little girl originally thought that sentence would allow her to see her parents again, but it was just a beautiful lie full of white. However, he never expected that the elder brother never intended to break his promise. In the twisted and changing underworld beyond, the little girl has already seen the father and mother she longs for. Although they could not reunite during their lifetime, this time, they can enter reincarnation together. Even, become a family again. Thank you, big brother. Faced with the family she longed to see, the little girl did not leave immediately. Instead, she looked at Nai-Chen's figure very seriously and thanked him softly. Tears fell from the corners of her eyes, and this tear was full of sincerity. Big brother, although I don't know your name yet. But, goodbye. The little girl waved to Nai-Chen gratefully, and then she smiled with a hint of satisfaction. With tears in her eyes, she reached the other side through the space cast by the source stone and embraced her family happily. More and more ghosts knew the function of the door in front of them, and happily returned to their original underworld. But before leaving, they all looked up at the sky and expressed their gratitude in their own way. Some bowed their heads and saluted, and some knelt down to worship. After an unknown period of time, all the ghosts near Shenglian Mountain returned to their original world. 8 source stones have been collected. However, does the host really want to make it into a ring? Of course. Wasteful, wasteful. The system sighed, as if it was extremely distressed. A ring for my wife, so what if it's a waste? Nai-Chen smiled slightly. Although he had solved the 8 goddesses without any danger. But from the moment just now, he felt a strange aura that was extremely similar to the dragon blood formation. He suddenly realized that it was no wonder that the 8 goddesses would be so difficult to the underworld. The disaster in the Imperial Mausoleum is likely to be related to them, the 9 netherworlds, and even the mysterious Lord of the Underworld. Perhaps, the disaster in the Imperial Mausoleum is far from as simple as it seems. But compared to these, looking into the distance with a smile, Nai-Chen is more concerned about another problem now. That is, the Empress wife who is still sleeping peacefully in bed. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 475. The sun shines softly into the dilapidated hut. Enveloped by this warmth, the beauty on the bed slowly turned around, her eyelashes trembling slightly. Sleep so comfortable. As if the fatigue from her body had been wiped away overnight, Chu Qingyu stretched her waist in comfort and couldn't help but let out a soft sigh. The jade hand gently pressed against the bed sheet and stood up slowly, and the 3,000 green hairs danced like a waterfall. But her cheek had just moved a little away from the pillow, and when she opened her sleepy eyes, she saw Nai Chen sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at her with a smile. "Honey, I forgot to put on my clothes." Nai Chen was immediately amused when he saw the cute look of the empress who had slept until she was confused. He quickly picked up the clothes scattered on the bed and handed them to Chu Qingyu. Huh! Only then did Chu Qingyu remember something and quickly glanced down. The naked and graceful body is only slightly covered by the scattered hair, but other than that. Suddenly, her cheeks turned slightly red. "I was so tired after last night and slept so comfortably that I even forgot to put on my clothes. Quick, close your eyes." Chu Qingyu took the phoenix skirt and the clothes as thin as cicada wings, and immediately covered her delicate body with the quilt in shame. He only dared to put on his clothes slowly under the cover of quilt. But since the quilt is not big, the way to put on the phoenix skirt is a little cumbersome. The flawless snow-white skin is always exposed from the quilt from time to time. What's more important is, she clearly realized that Nai Chen never turned his eyes away from the beginning to the end, and just looked at her silently. So much so that when she woke up early in the morning, before she even left the quilt, Chu Qingyu's beautiful forehead and cheeks were already covered with redness. Call. After finally sorting out her clothes, Chu Qingyu finally took a long breath. Yu Yuan stared at Nai Chen, put his bare feet on Nai Chen's hands, and kicked him twice angrily. "How dare you extend your feet over there? Wife, you are asking for trouble." However, these two gentle taps were no punishment for Nai Chen. Instead, Nai Chen quickly stretched out his hand and grabbed the snow-white foot. What are you going to do?" Chu Qingyu never expected Nai Chen's actions and quickly tried to pull away her ankle. Unfortunately, it was still a step too late. The delicate white feet had fallen into Nai Chen's hands, and what was even more terrifying was that Nai Chen held out two fingers with a subtle smile, and then two fingers gently scratched the soft solace of the feet. Suddenly, a numb and itchy feeling spread all over the body along the solace of the feet. "Hey, wait." Chu Qingyu's pretty face changed slightly, but she still tried her best to maintain a cool demeanor, trying to break free from Nai Chen's hand. But before she could straighten up, the overwhelming itching sensation could no longer be stopped. Itching is just something among the five senses. I will not succumb to this simple. Puff. No, don't touch there. At least one finger is missing. Hey, this technique. Poof, ha 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 ha. Finally, Chu Qingyu, who tried her best to resist, could no longer bear the feeling that was coming one after another in her solace. He was lying on the bed, his cheek buried in his arms, and his melodious laughter like an aureole could not be heard. A strong smile came over him, and even the corners of his eyes couldn't help but shed a few tears. Nai Chen. This emperor must. Ha 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 ha. After 10 full minutes, Nai Chen finally slowly let go of his hand with a smile on his face. The body of the empress was indeed extraordinary. She was able to laugh for such a long time and still retain a trace of stubbornness. For an ordinary person, 10 minutes would be enough to make him faint from laughter. But even the empress let go of Nai Chen. A feeling of numbness filled the whole body. Chu Qingyu was dripping with sweat around her neck, but her whole body was limp and paralyzed on the bed. Finally, she managed to hold up her body, and Chu Qingyu stared at Nai Chen dimly, full of resentment. It's a pity that he doesn't even have the slightest strength in his body, and he doesn't even have the energy to retaliate. Nai Chen suddenly smiled. My wife, you took the initiative to put your foot on my hand. You can't blame me for such an obvious flaw. It was so reasonable that she didn't even know how to refute it. Chu Qingyu could only stare at Nai Chen with tears in her eyes. Damn it, when did this emperor suffer such a big loss? But just when Chu Qingyu was quietly thinking about how to take revenge, she suddenly recalled the inexplicable hot feeling that came from the solace of her feet when she was caught by Nai Chen. Nai Chen's hand seemed. Chu Qingyu suddenly stepped forward, pulled Nai Chen's arm with concern, and quickly looked at his palm. Suddenly, a wound flowing with golden blood appeared in front of his eyes. The golden blood represents the power of the Suangu holy body in Nai Chen's body. But without opening the Suangu holy body, the blood should not turn into gold. Unless. Is your body out of control? No, I should say, what exactly did you do and why did your body exceed the load it can bear? Completely different from the relaxed joking just now, Chu Qingyu's expression was obviously filled with deep concern and worry. Ahem, I just accidentally cut my hand when I was working yesterday. You're overthinking it, my wife. Nai Chen coughed twice and tried to evade the question. I don't believe it. But Chu Qingyu didn't believe it. Instead, she came forward angrily and grabbed his collar, with a bit of empress's pride. Don't try to deceive me, tell me the truth. Otherwise. After thinking for a while, Chu Qingyu couldn't figure out how to scare Nai Chen. But the expression of hard thinking made Nai Chen laugh. He naturally knew that he wanted to ask it anyway because of the empress's concern. After thinking for a while, Nai Chen finally decided not to hide it anymore. He sighed and said truthfully. Okay, I admit that I actually went to Shenglian Mountain secretly at night while you were sleeping. Then what? Then I killed all the remaining 7 goddesses and flattened Shenglian Mountain. Then what? Then I came back. Look, I'm fine. I just used a little more power than I can bear. I need to recover for a day or two. Nai Chen shook his shoulders lightly to express that he still had a lot of strength and was not injured at all. That won't work. Who knew that the Empress suddenly became excited and even threw herself into Nai Chen's arms. From now on, no matter when. As long as you may face danger, you must never leave alone secretly. You must take me with you. Looking down, Nai Chen could see clearly. Chu Qingyu's clear eyes were clearly flashing with tears of concern and worry. The Empress, who seemed to be indifferent to everything, was so worried and anxious because he secretly left and challenged the 7 goddesses alone. Nai Chen also suddenly felt warm in his heart. He couldn't help but hug Chu Qingyu tightly in his arms and whispered softly in her ear. Don't worry, this is the last time. From now on, no matter what happens, I will never leave you alone. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 476. That's pretty much it? Chu Qingyu's tears turned into laughter, and she hit Nai Chen angrily. Opening the curtains, warm sunlight shines into the room, and the breeze carries a hint of coolness. It was already past 8 o'clock in the morning. At this time, most people had already finished their meals and started working hard on the fields all day long. The whole town seems quiet and peaceful, so ordinary that you can't help but immerse yourself in it. But I didn't expect that one day would pass so quickly. Today, it's time to go back to Tianyun Palace. Walking to the door, Chu Qingyu suddenly looked back. A gust of breeze blew by, gently floating the light blue dress, as beautiful and elegant as a blooming lotus. Yes, after all, many people are still waiting for us. And there's also a big wedding. Nai Chen couldn't help but smile, walked to the side of Qianying, and held her delicate jade hand. Squeak. The two walked out of the house. Looking back, the cabin still looks very dilapidated. But for some reason, in the eyes of these two people, this ordinary and even shabby little house seemed to become inexplicably warm in an instant. The 2 candles on the low, old wooden table were not yet burned out, and the chair with only 3 wooden legs still showed signs of having been sat on for a while. Especially on the small field next to the house, the already barren land has experienced a whole day of cultivation, and green seedlings have actually sprouted out of the ground. There are still residual morning dew among the seedlings, pointing to the sky against the new sun, and they are growing vigorously. The small courtyard seems to be full of vigorous and upward vitality. A white paper crane floated down in front of the two of them. Chu Qingyu glanced back at the courtyard with nostalgia, and then sat on the paper crane with some reluctance. Sticking close to her back and holding her delicate waist, Nai Chen also sat on the paper crane. Although a day spent in a small town was a dull life for mortals, it was this tranquility that gave the two powerful emperors a completely different feeling from the past. Perhaps such an ordinary and peaceful life may be very rare in the future, but it will definitely become an eternal part of memory and will never be easily forgotten. The crane crows in Jujao and the sound is heard in the wild. The fairy-like sound of cranes echoed in the sky. The people in the town were busy farming, but few paid attention to the shadows quietly passing by in the sky. Crash. Only the crisp sound of keys hitting his ears suddenly alerted Mr. Zhang next door. What sound? Suddenly sensing something was wrong, he quickly ran out of the house. Uncle Zhang suddenly saw two gold ingots placed quietly on the wall separated from the next door cabin. Beside the gold ingot, there was only a bunch of small keys left. This bunch of keys was exactly what he personally handed over to the two young men yesterday. They left. Old man Zhang hurriedly picked up the keys and gold ingots. In the past, he rented out that dilapidated little house just to earn a few copper coins to buy some firewood, rice, oil, and salt to subsidize his family. But now that the gold ingot was placed in front of him, he didn't know why, but he wanted to see the two young people again. Even Uncle Zhang didn't know why he thought so. It just felt like he saw a completely different feeling in those two people. Sure enough, the two old doors had been locked. Hey, young people, are you still there? Uncle Zhang hurriedly knocked on the door, but couldn't wait for any response. After hesitating for a moment, he finally decided to insert the key, click and unlock the door. The wooden door opened, and what came into view was the same peaceful courtyard as before. Quiet, tranquil, without any sound. Young people. Uncle Zhang walked into the house and looked around. But apart from the two candles left on the table, there was no trace left here. The two slightly strange young people appeared without warning and disappeared without a trace in an instant. He had been here before, but it seemed as if he had never appeared before. Hey, at least say hello. Old man Zhang sighed in frustration. He has received many tenants, and most of them take money and keys at the same time. There was little communication between the two sides. But even though they were very similar this time, he had an inexplicable fondness for Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu. Without touching the candle on the table, Mr. Zhang just walked out of the room with some regret and dejection. But when he looked around, trying to find the remaining traces of the two people. But suddenly I realized that the small vegetable garden in the distance seemed to be a little different. The land in the vegetable garden had been barren for a long time and could not grow anything. But at a casual glance, he suddenly realized. In the vegetable garden, there seems to be a touch of green. Uncle Zhang suddenly felt shocked. He ran to the vegetable garden in disbelief and quickly opened the small door. But when the scene came into view, his eyes widened in disbelief. It's still simply green here. I don't know what kind of seeds are planted under the soil. Those seedlings that broke out of the ground are growing rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, forming flowers, blooming. Just the moment he opened the wooden door, the seedlings that were still growing took shape. Blue flowers bloomed in the vegetable garden, and the faint fragrance drifted to all directions. In particular, there was a drop of clear blue liquid hanging in the core of each flower. With the fragrant flower fragrance, drops of liquid dripped from the core of the flower and fell on the ground. As each drop of liquid merged into the soil, it immediately emitted waves and spread to the surroundings. The light blue waves visible to the naked eye were like ripples in the water, not only quickly spreading throughout the wooden house, but also continuing to spread to the surroundings. Streets, fields, mountains. In a blink of an eye, the whole town was affected by this wonderful wave. And the power of this wave. Outside the vegetable garden, Mr. Zhang stretched out his palm. He was extremely surprised to find that his arm and the surroundings on his body were slowly disappearing at a slow speed. Not only that, the originally yellow and turbid eyes suddenly became clear and bright. The back pain that had been aching all day was completely gone, and he could stand up easily. When he looked around, he saw clearly. Not only himself, but also the flowers, plants, and trees in the mountains and fields grew inexplicably. This wonderful thing was like the morning dew, silently nourishing everything and the town. As the flowers in the vegetable garden swayed in the wind, the whole town underwent unimaginable and wonderful changes. Unconsciously, Mr. Zhang raised his head inexplicably. But when he looked up at the sky, his eyes seemed to suddenly stop. In the clear sky with thousands of dark clouds, a white paper crane spread its wings and flew, soaring in the boundless sky. And on the paper crane, the woman who stayed here yesterday had already changed into a gorgeous and beautiful light blue phoenix skirt, and the man was also dressed in a white robe, outstanding. Riding on the crane, like a pair of fairy lovers. No, it should be said, that is. So that's it? Looking at the two figures going away, Mr. Zhang seemed to understand something. A faint smile appeared on his face, and he walked out of the vegetable garden and the courtyard silently, locking the two wooden doors. He knew that perhaps he would never see those two people again in his lifetime. But this door, this small courtyard, from now on, will only be opened for those two people. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 477. By the way, it feels like the Empress hasn't been back for several days. On the top of Tianyun Palace, looking into the distance, Shen Kongshuang said a little lonely. As one of the 12 holy envoys and the most powerful killer around the Empress, she has an unshakable loyalty to Chu Qingyu. Although she had been taken away and spanked by the Empress frequently recently, Shen Kongshuang always felt empty in her heart after not seeing the Empress for a while. Even my butt feels empty. Nai Chen hasn't been back for several days. No, it should be said that the two of them must have abandoned Tianyun Palace and secretly went somewhere to show off their affection. Damn it, I am a pet animal after all. Even if I go on honeymoon, I will bring a light bulb with me. Aolan on the side also crossed her waist with anger and protested. Forget it. After hearing this, Shen Kongshuang said with some trepidation. Being a light bulb? Are you sure you won't be caught and spanked by the Empress? Spanking? I'm not afraid. Although the Empress looks very serious, she has always been very kind to me, and she has never been willing to hit me until now. Unexpectedly, Aolan raised the corner of his mouth and said rather proudly. Damn it, is it true? I have followed the Empress for so many years, how could the Empress treat me differently and only hit me and not others? Wrong. Shen Kongshuang said with a somewhat pitiful expression, but seemed to suddenly realize something. Etc. So far, the only people spanked by the Empress are me and the Blossom Saint. And the Flower Saint is also the Empress's best friend, which doesn't mean that. In fact, the Empress's behavior is not a punishment, but rather a recognition of me, or even, a reward. It was as if some strange attribute suddenly awakened. Shen Kongshuang's eyes suddenly lit up, and he even felt a little proud. Humph. Not being spanked by the Empress may mean that the Empress has never wanted to reward you. Who said being beaten by the Empress was punishment? The Empress's palm was as cold as jade. Although it hurt a little when she hit it, in retrospect, the aftertaste was very good. I have occasionally heard some male cultivators say before that if they could see the empress, they would be extremely happy to even be beaten up by the empress. Presumably, this must be the reason. Is the queen's spanking really that comfortable? Aolan looked a little unbelievable. But after seeing Shen Kengshuang's confident expression, she couldn't help but feel a little convinced. Hey, if you say that, I want to try it next time. It's a pity that I don't know where the Empress and Nai Chen are dating and loving each other right now. Otherwise, I must go find them now. Impossible, there is no way the Empress is dating. At this moment, Elder Wang, who had been listening to the conversation between the two for a long time, suddenly made a voice. At this moment, Elder Wang's breath was weak and his eyes were filled with dark circles. Chu Qingyu is a rare wise king, and many things in Tianyuan Palace have been handled by her personally. But now that Chu Qingyu has left, these important matters have been left in the hands of Elder Wang. In the past few days, Elder Wang had worked hard day and night and was already quite weak from exhaustion. But even so, what he cared about most was far from this little hardship. But the Empress, as a wise monarch, has been out for several days. How could she possibly go on a date? Let me tell you, the Empress will never be that kind of person. There is no way that boy Nai Chen could be so charming to the Empress. Even though he had just been cruelly shown his affection in the court last time, Elder Wang still straightened his chest and was full of confidence at this moment. For it. Unexpectedly, Aolan stared at him with a look that looked like a fool. I don't believe it. Moreover, there are no external or internal worries now. How could the Empress go out to handle business? Apart from dating, nothing else was possible. How could it be? Elder Wang wanted to try to refute, but found that it seemed to be the case. After all, the situation in the Imperial Mausoleum is now peaceful, and all the major sects are happy to surrender because of the imperial majesty displayed by the Empress in the Imperial Mausoleum. The rebellion was put down, and Tianyuan Palace's morale was at its peak. Logically speaking, there should really be nothing to deal with. Unwilling to let the image of the Empress be slandered like this, Elder Wang tried his best to think of words. Finally, he had an idea and thought of something. No, when the Empress and Nai Chen went out before, Nai Chen told me many times that he and the Empress went out together to deal with two ancient giant pythons hiding somewhere. Now that the Empress is missing, I must be trying to deal with them. Are you sure? Sure. Aolan thought for a while, then asked in disbelief. Then let me ask you, when Nai Chen described the two giant pythons, did he say that their color was light pink? Elder Wang was stunned for a moment. It seems to be true. Did Nai Chen also say that the two giant pythons sometimes bathe in floods? Nai Chen really said it? Strange, how did you know this? Could it be that Nai Chen also told you? Elder Wang was full of doubts. Unexpectedly, Aolan endured it for a long time, but finally he couldn't bear it and burst into laughter. Elder Wang, you are out. Her color was light pink and she was bathed in flood water. Wasn't that a metaphorical kiss that Nai Chen was trying to cover up when he went on a date with the Empress? Kissing? How is that possible? After a long silence, Elder Wang couldn't believe it at all. But carefully recalling Nai Chen's description before, and the slightly strange look on the Empress's face every time she went out with Nai Chen, he suddenly realized something. No, I don't believe it. He suddenly understood in his heart, but even so, Elder Wang was still unwilling to believe it and tried to find even a hint of refutation. But at this moment, a white paper crane suddenly passed across the sky in the distance. Accompanied by the melodious cry of the crane, in the eyes of everyone, the paper crane flew towards Tianyuan Palace. And slowly fell to the top of the mountain. Honey, hold my hand and come down. Nai Chen took the lead and jumped off the paper crane, extending his palm like a gentleman. This emperor is not a weak little girl. Chu Qingyu glanced at him resentfully. Ahem, aren't I worried that we slept so late last night and my wife, you are too tired. It does seem to be a bit. Her jade legs were slightly sore. Chu Qingyu hesitated for a moment, but still grabbed Nai Chen's hand. But just after leaving Zhai He, riding her down, leaning towards her from top to bottom at a perfect angle, Nai Chen gently kissed her snow-white forehead. You, what are you doing? Not expecting Nai Chen's actions at all, Chu Qingyu suddenly took a half step back slightly in embarrassment. I'm worried that my wife is too weak, so I'll give you some energy. I believe you, ghost. The atmosphere suddenly seemed a little sweet. Elder Wang on the side was completely dumbfounded. Sure enough, the Empress really went on a date. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 478. Hey, Elder Wang, why do you look so bad? Is it because I've been out on a date these days, and you've been too busy with work, and you've worn yourself out? Noticing Elder Wang's dull eyes, haggard expression, and weak and depressed look, almost ready to burst into tears, Chu Qingyu asked. She casually took out a small wooden box and threw it into Elder Wang's hand. This is an earth-level concentration pill, which has a good effect of recovering fatigue and purifying the soul. You've been too tired these days, so take it and recover your body. Thank you, Empress. If it were in the past, the Empress would be so considerate of her subordinates and even bestow such a precious magic weapon, Elder Wang would definitely be extremely grateful and excited. But at this moment, although he respectfully took the pill, he still had a sad face, full of a feeling of wanting to cry but not having tears. Could it be that Elder Wang has some hidden disease that even the concentrated mind and spiritual pill cannot restore him? It was the first time that Chu Qingyu saw Elder Wang showing such a strange expression, and she couldn't help but feel puzzled. Ahem, I feel like you probably misunderstood, maybe Elder Wang's real fatigue is not physical. Nai Chen smiled and said. Not physical? Yes, I feel that what really makes Elder Wang depressed is actually his mind. Chu Qingyu. Do you mean that Elder Wang is more than 400 years old and still alone, without a Taoist partner? So the situation makes him like this? Well, maybe, but not entirely. Puff. Every word of the conversation was like a knife piercing Elder Wang's heart again and again. It's okay to be abused by the Empress, but why whip the corpse? With no way to express his pain, Elder Wang could only cry out in his heart. Let's not talk about this for now. Now, there are more important things. Fortunately, at this time, Nai Chen pushed Chu Qingyu forward with some expectation. Are you talking about that? Ahem, it's time. Chu Qingyu coughed lightly, and she also had a slight smile and yearning. The two flew through the air hand in hand, leaving behind Elder Wang, who was so pitiful that he almost vomited blood after being whipped repeatedly, and a group of stunned disciples. Although the Empress had personally delivered mung bean porridge to Nai Chen before. But this hand in hand, without concealing the sweet relationship, is still the first time even since the official announcement. Damn senior brother Nai, I can't stand it. I don't believe it. As long as the Empress hasn't mentioned the wedding, there might be a chance. But the Empress and hurry up and keep it a secret just now. Could it be about the wedding? Yes, it shouldn't be. What if the Empress is talking about breaking up? Do you think the Empress looks like she can break up? Eh? The disciples were full of imagination, but they didn't know that Chu Qingyu had taken out the golden bamboo scroll that had been prepared long ago after returning to Tianyun Hall. This golden bamboo scroll is made of spiritual bamboo that has grown for more than 100 years on Zhaimo Holy Mountain, and then refined with gold silk. Each roll of golden bamboo is extremely precious, with spiritual energy flowing on it, immortal for 10,000 years. For many sects, They spent a lot of effort and energy to finally get the golden bamboo scroll, just to record the secret method of the sect on such a precious material, so that it can be passed down for 10,000 years. But it was such a precious bamboo scroll that Chu Qingyu took out more than 1,000 that had been prepared in the space. These golden bamboo scrolls will all be used as wedding invitations. From the various caves to the Holy Lands, and down to the major sects that are famous in the world, all will receive golden bamboo scrolls. Whether in terms of quantity or scale, it is hard to imagine how grand this wedding will be. I am afraid that it is difficult to find such a grand wedding banquet throughout the ages. But there is only one problem. Looking at the golden bamboo scrolls that almost formed a small mountain in front of him, Chu Qingyu was obviously lost in thought. There are so many golden bamboo scrolls prepared, and relatively speaking, it will take a lot of effort to write them all. If I write it alone, I don't know when I will finish it. Even if Nai Chen is added, the two of them can only speed up the efficiency. Unless, add a few more laborers. Moreover, as a qualified labor force, not only must the cultivation status be sufficient to ensure the spiritual power flow of the handwriting written by the pen, and they must keep their mouths shut and be obedient. And such a qualified candidate. Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu smiled at each other, and instantly understood each other. Aolan and the saint of Fanhua, a dragon king with the blood of returning to his ancestors, and a saint of the Holy Land in the realm of a great emperor. No matter from which aspect, this person and dragon are simply perfect. Aolan, come here quickly. Nai Chen waved outside the hall. Swoosh. Soon, the petite figure with dragon horns on his head hurriedly flew into the Tianyun hall. Why did you suddenly call me? What's wrong? Did you eat carp? Aolan immediately looked around excitedly, looking around in the hall. Just know how to eat your head. Nai Chen laughed angrily and knocked her little head. But soon, a subtle smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. I have something very important to tell you. If you complete the task perfectly, there will be countless delicious foods waiting for you in a few days. There is also this good thing. Aolan had never heard of such a wonderful promise, and her eyes suddenly lit up with excitement, as if there were little stars twinkling in them. Nai Chen bent down and whispered in her ear. You only need to go to the Holy Land of Flowers and bring back the Holy Maiden of Flowers to complete a small task. What task? Aolan seemed a little impatient. Write the wedding invitation. Wedding? Even Aolan was shocked. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 479. Accompanied by the sound of a dragon's roar, a dragon with golden scales all over its body entered the Holy Land of Flowers. Aolan, why are you here? Seeing Aolan, Saint of Flowers was a little surprised. After all, this little dragon only followed Nai Chen around except for eating, and rarely came out alone. Saint sister, the Empress wants to see you for something very important. At this moment, Aolan, who landed on the ground and transformed back into a human form, said hurriedly with a hint of anxiety. Is the Empress looking for me for something? Saint of Flowers' face changed slightly, realizing that things were indeed not as simple as she imagined. I had just rested for a while after returning from the Emperor's mausoleum. I didn't expect that there would be another wave of trouble. What happened? Is it something about the Tianyun Palace, or is there another accident in the Emperor's mausoleum, or even, the underworld? Even Qingyu can feel the importance of something, it's really hard to imagine what will happen. I understand, take me there quickly. Not daring to slack off at all, Saint Fanhua quickly asked Aolan to transform into a dragon and carry her to Tianyun Palace. Passing over mountains and rivers, overlooking the vast land under her feet. Saint Fanhua could clearly see that many sects had already opened their defense formations. The Lanchuan continent, which had been silent for thousands of years and had hardly experienced much turmoil, was obviously alarmed by the catastrophe of the abnormal emperor's mausoleum, so that many sects were more vigilant, fearing that related accidents would happen again. Tianyuan Palace, there seems to be no change. But when she landed in Tianyuan Palace, Saint Fanhua quickly realized that the atmosphere was unexpectedly calm at the moment, as if there was no feeling of anything major happening. It seemed to be just the same as always, without any abnormality. But thinking that Aolan was sent by the Empress to find her so hurriedly, she did not dare to let down her guard at all, and hurried to Tianyuan Palace. "King Yu, what happened? Could it be that something strange has emerged in the imperial mausoleum again? I heard the voice before I saw the person." First, the worried voice of Saint Fanhua came. Then, with the dancing of golden hair and the sound of hurried footsteps, she hurried into the Tianyuan hall. What I saw was Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu writing seriously at their desks. The two people who always showed off their affection all the time seemed to be writing something so seriously at this moment, and they didn't even stop writing. Beside the two people, there were scrolls piled up like a small mountain. Just a glance at it showed that there were hundreds or even thousands of them. More importantly, this is the golden bamboo scroll. Attracted by her eyes, Saint Fanhua soon showed a hint of surprise. Of course, she couldn't have been unaware of how precious this golden bamboo scroll, which was made from bamboo from Zhaimo Holy Mountain and had the ability to be preserved for tens of thousands of years, was. For many small sects, such precious things are almost impossible to find with a fortune, and it is difficult to get them even with countless efforts. Although it may not be difficult for Tianyuan Temple to find the golden bamboo scroll. But it is still a bit unimaginable that so many golden bamboo scrolls were collected at the same time. What happened that made King Yu so anxious to collect so many golden bamboo scrolls? Even the Saint of Flowers, her face was slightly pale at this moment. It is even speculated that there may be a powerful enemy that even Tianyuan Temple can hardly deal with. That is why King Yu was so anxious to collect the golden bamboo scrolls, draw formations and talismans on them, and prepare for the battle. The matter of the Emperor's mausoleum has just been settled not long ago. If another powerful enemy attacks at this time, the situation may be very bad. The Saint of Flowers looked serious, and her thoughts were fluctuating. She knew that the situation of the major sects in the world was not stable now. In addition, King Yu and Nai Chen had just returned from the underworld and had no time to recuperate. If something unexpected happened at this time, what would be the consequences? This time, she didn't even dare to disturb Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu, who were concentrating on writing. She just walked quietly to the side of the two, leaned down quietly without making any noise, and quietly looked at the words written by Chu Qingyu. However, it was different from what she thought. What Chu Qingyu wrote was neither a mysterious ancient text formation nor a talisman for guarding and killing. But 3 days later, Tianyuan Palace, wedding. Among the countless words, the eyes of the Saint of Flowers were completely attracted by these words. Hey, degree. She was completely dumbfounded. I thought it was some earth-shattering event. No, this is an earth-shattering event. If the news of Empress Qingyu's upcoming wedding spreads, it will indeed cause a greater sensation than the catastrophe of the emperor's mausoleum. The marriage of any great emperor may not shock the world, but only Qingyu will be enough to cause a sensation in the entire Lanchuan continent. After all, that's Empress Qingyu. Saint Fanhua never expected that these two people went to the underworld for their honeymoon and openly sprinkled a wave of dog food in front of the whole world. It turned out to be real. Well, not bad, you came quite fast this time. Nai Chen and I have thought about it for a long time and have decided to hold our wedding in Tianyuan Palace in 3 days. At that time, this emperor will invite Dongtian Holy Land and more than 1,000 sects in the world to attend the wedding. These are the invitations. Looking at the Blossom Saint, Chu Qingyu's clear eyes held unshakable determination. In his usual cold and arrogant attitude, there was a hint of infinite expectation that had never appeared before. This kind of feeling has never been experienced by the flower saint from any powerful emperor, especially King Yu. The past arrogant empress actually said it so firmly, Nai Chen couldn't help but put down the pen and paper in his hand and smiled from the bottom of his heart. The two looked at each other, but neither of them looked away. No matter in the eyes or the expression, it seems to be full of affection and a bit too sweet. These are actually wedding invitations. So, what am I here for? Nai Chen spread his hands. Of course I'm here to do the work. In other words, you serve as free labor for this emperor. Chu Qingyu added. The two looked at each other and smiled knowingly, as if they had a tacit understanding. Only the Blossom Saint was dumbfounded. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 480. The golden bamboo scroll is extremely precious. If it is stored properly, it will not be damaged too seriously. It is not impossible to preserve it for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. But in contrast, writing words on the golden bamboo scroll requires a lot of spiritual power as support. Especially the wedding invitations written for Empress Qingyu, which require great care. So tired. After writing more than 10 golden bamboo scrolls, Saint Fanhua felt a little tired. But I didn't expect Qingyu to really make up her mind to hold a wedding. The pen in her hand hovered in the air, and her eyes could not help but stop for a moment. As a good girlfriend for 100 years, although Qingyu usually behaves very coldly and even bullies people from time to time, Saint Fanhua knows very well the true character of Empress Qingyu, who is respected by the world, hidden behind her coldness and arrogance. Although those two people are so sweet and enviable all day long, the Empress actually found her own happiness. She was able to make such a firm decision and even said it without hesitation. Even though it was a little sweet, she couldn't help but feel a warm current flowing through her heart, and she was happy for Chu Qingyu from the bottom of her heart. She once thought it was a long way off, but she didn't expect that she might actually see it with her own eyes one day. As the only good girlfriend around the Empress, no matter how tired she is today, she must complete it. A warm smile appeared on the corner of the mouth of the Saint of Flowers. Suddenly, even the hand holding the pen seemed to eliminate all fatigue and burned with unprecedented fighting spirit. Qingyu, don't worry, just an invitation, let this saint help you. A dazzling golden light appeared on the tip of the pen, and with the flow of spiritual energy on it, the Saint of Flowers wrote faster. One by one, the invitations with golden silk and bamboo scrolls were completed quickly under her hands. The Saint of Flowers was working hard here without complaint. So fast. Damn it, in order to have a taste of the human race's wedding banquet, I have to speed up. I want to sit at the table with the children. Seeing the Saint of Flowers working so hard, Aolan was obviously shocked. The little tail was raised with high fighting spirit, and he accelerated the speed of writing with full fighting spirit. The handwriting written under the blessing of the dragon race's ancestral bloodline obviously made the golden bamboo scroll flow with a different kind of spiritual energy. For a while, the Saint of Flowers and Aolan seemed to have entered a competitive mode, and their speed kept speeding up. After writing a golden bamboo scroll, they looked at each other from time to time, as if they wanted to surpass each other. Damn, you are a saint indeed. I didn't expect you to be so fast. Hee, your little dragon is not bad. Writing on the golden bamboo scroll is far from being as simple as it looks. I didn't expect you to be able to keep up with my speed. Of course. And, I have something even better. Look at the unique skill of this Dragon King, 3 pens for 1 use. After the voice fell, Aolan not only held a pen in each hand. The dragon's tail, which was as soft and silky as a brush, was also dipped in ink. No way, the dragon's tail can actually be used as a pen, and it's better than handwriting. This is simply cheating. Why are you working so hard? Is the kids' table really that delicious? The Saint of Flowers did not expect Aoian's actions at all. She no longer dared to slack off and hurriedly accelerated her speed. Swish, swish, swish. For a while, the entire Tianyun Palace was silent, with only the sound of writing echoing. Even the completed golden bamboo scrolls were piled up like a small mountain. Time passed slowly, and I don't know how many hours had passed. Seeing that the sun had already set, the sky was covered with stars. Aolan finally ran out of strength, sighed, and stretched her waist a few times. Huh, I'm so tired, I've written a full 300 invitations. As she said that, she touched the frosted dragon tail that was a little red with heartache. Well, me too, with you, the naughty little dragon who used the dragon tail together, my hand is almost numb from writing. Ordinary physical labor is not worth mentioning for a cultivator, but after writing the golden bamboo scroll for a whole day, Aolan and the Saint of Flowers were obviously very tired. But fortunately, at this rate, it will be almost finished by dawn. Moreover, there is the Empress next to them. Wait, where is the Empress? At this time, the man and the dragon suddenly realized this problem. When they first started writing the wedding invitations, the Empress was writing beside them, making them think that she was accompanying them in the fight. But obviously, the number of invitations written by Chu Qingyu was less than that of the one man and the dragon. That's not right, the Empress's mastery of swordsmanship far exceeds ours. Logically speaking, the speed of writing the golden silk and bamboo scroll should be very fast, why shouldn't it be so slow? The flower saint seemed a little confused. After all, over the years, she knew very well that Chu Qingyu could not be the kind of lazy person. Why was the speed so slow this time? At this moment, looking at the corner far away from the Tianyun Palace, the flower saint and Aolan noticed that the Empress had already sat on the rocking chair that was moved from nowhere. Beside her, Nai Chen approached and gently put a piece of clothing on her. You must be tired after staying up so late. The evening breeze was cool. Nai Chen pulled Chu Qingyu's hand to his mouth and exhaled a breath of warm air. The warm wind gently rolled over his right hand, which was very comfortable. Chu Qingyu couldn't help but whispered with some resentment. Actually, I'm not that tired. You were worried that I would catch a cold, so you took me to change into thicker clothes. Then he brought me tremella and lotus seed congee, saying it was nourishing. For such a long time, I haven't written many invitations. It seems to be true. Thinking back, Nai Chen couldn't help but smile, and had to say. I'm worried about your health, my wife. What if you are exhausted and not beautiful on the wedding day? If I'm not beautiful, will you not marry me? Of course not, even if you become smaller like entering the underworld, I will still marry you. I just hope that the Empress on the wedding can become the most beautiful existence in the world. I never thought that Nai Chen's words would be impeccable. Under the moonlight, Chu Qingyu didn't know what to say for a moment, so she had to turn her head halfway in panic, pulling the clothes draped over her shoulders to try to cover her pretty face. However, the familiar smell from Nai Chen's clothes made her cheeks slightly redder, revealing a different kind of cold beauty under the moonlight. No wonder the Empress's work efficiency is so low. It turns out that she secretly showed her affection all day behind our backs. Oh. Finally understanding why the Empress's work efficiency was so low today, the Saint of Flowers and Aolan suddenly felt that their stomachs, which had not eaten all day, were filled. Report, the Empress is not working hard, she is slacking off and showing off her love. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 481. Phew, it's finally over. As a ray of dawn shone into the Tianyun Palace in the early morning, The flower saint and Aolan sighed and finally took a breath. Looking at the golden bamboo scrolls arranged like a hill around them, the weak eye circles of each person and one dragon were somewhat sunken. After writing for a whole day and night, it was obvious that their bodies were a little overworked. However, compared to their physical bodies, the Blossom Saint and Aolan felt more mentally tired at this moment. After all, spending all night writing invitations was tiring enough. Plus the enhanced extra sweet dog food that comes around from time to time. This life is simply not what humans should live. Whoa. The flower saint, who was treated as free labor, looked a little pitiful. I only had one day to write it all. At this moment, Chu Qingyu sighed in surprise as she looked at the thousands of golden bamboo scrolls. When she came to one person and one dragon, there was a hint of tenderness in her eyes. He touched Ao Ian's little head and squeezed the flower saint's tired shoulders twice. It's been a hard day, thank you. Aolan, and, Meng Xian. Mensin. The moment the voice fell, the flower saint was stunned for a long time. As the saint of the Holy Land of Flowers, many people directly refer to her as the saint. Very few people know the real name of the flower saint, Yao Mensin. Not many people have ever called her with such an affectionate name. Unexpectedly, Qingyu would take the initiative to change her title today. Mensin. Qingyu, the last time you called me with this title was probably the last time. A strand of golden hair hangs down from her ears, and the heart of the flower saint girl shines like a warm sun. It was as if all the fatigue from the whole night had been swept away, and the joy on his cheeks could not be concealed deep in his heart. Qingyu, I'm so touched. The slim body suddenly rushed forward and hugged Chu Qingyu. Lowering her head, the Blossom Saint's golden hair was as smooth as a waterfall, and she was so moved that she rubbed it against Chu Qingyu's chest. I was so moved that I even had tears in my eyes. I'm so touched. Does this mean that Qingyu truly recognizes my identity as a good best friend? If I had known earlier, I would have worked harder last night to not peek at you and work hard, and I would not have secretly laughed at you because your breasts are not as big as mine, woo woo woo. Okay, I haven't called you that before, and I don't really dislike you. Seeing the pitiful appearance of the flower saint, Chu Qingyu was a little amused. Although I did act a little cold no matter who I faced before, it's not like this. Unexpectedly, the saint, who usually seemed very nervous, actually had unspoken worries. After comforting the flower saint in his arms for a while, Chu Qingyu slowly raised her head and looked at the rising sun. The golden bamboo scroll is ready, it's time. Tang Kao murmured softly. As the warm sunshine gradually enveloped the entire mountain top of Tianyun Palace. In the nascent dazzling light, the golden imperial bell emerged from the void. Boom! The melodious bell swayed on the top of the mountain. It was as energetic as the early morning, but also mixed with the inviolable majesty of the emperor. The sound of the bell spread in all directions like ripples, immediately making the leaves and trees along the way float. Quiet, melodious, yet majestic. This is. Whether they were practicing or the disciples and elders who were sleeping, they all opened their eyes at the same time. He immediately ran out of the house and looked into the air and around in disbelief. The Empress's imperial bell. They could clearly sense that there was no hostility in the imperial bell. Obviously, the imperial bell was not summoned by the Empress in response to the enemy. But as the imperial soldier of the Empress, the imperial bell rarely appears unless something extremely serious happens. The appearance of the imperial bell means that extremely important events will happen. Elder, why did the Empress summon the imperial bell at this time? What happened? I don't know, but the sound of the imperial bell today is indeed a little unusual. Both elders and disciples can hear a sense of solemnity in the ethereal bells. Even though they didn't know exactly why, they didn't dare to slack off and quickly gathered towards the top of the mountain, looking up at the sky in awe. The blue sky is as blue as the sea, boundless, with only a few white clouds floating quietly and slowly, as if they are dotting the flowers on the water. The breeze was gentle, carrying the melodious sound of the imperial bell as it blew by. Quiet, yet awe-inspiring. And amid the sound of the Dao Emperor bell, Chu Qingyu stepped through the void and walked slowly on the sky. The light blue phoenix skirt is like separated petals, softly wrapping the graceful figure in it. The hem of the skirt sways gently in the wind, like a butterfly dancing, like water splashing from a waterfall. The place is so cold and majestic that even the imperial bell trembles slightly to express its surrender. Although King Qin's face was absolutely beautiful without a single flaw, no one dared to have any blasphemous thoughts. What is the Empress? They didn't dare to make any sound, but both the disciples and the elders of Tianyun Palace felt something strange. Today's Empress is obviously a little different. But they racked their brains but couldn't figure out what was different from usual. They just felt that the majesty displayed by the Empress at this moment seemed stronger and more dignified than before. His eyes swept across the mountain top, overlooking the vast land, misty clouds. Under the attention of the crowd, Chu Qingyu finally opened her red lips, and her voice was as clear as a bell and fragrant. 3 days later, this emperor will hold a grand wedding with Nai Chen in Tianyun Palace. When mentioning the last few words, the cold voice revealed a slight panic for the first time. But even so, that feeling can make people clearly feel the unshakable firmness. Elder Wang. Elder Lu. The saints of the 12 Xingluo palaces. The disciples of Tianyun Palace. This sudden situation stunned everyone in an instant. At this moment, as Chu Qingyu's toes lightly tapped in the air, as the light shone, countless bamboo scrolls flew out. These bamboo scrolls were filled with holy and brilliant golden light, flying like butterflies to all corners of the world. And each of them exuded a rich aura. The golden bamboo scrolls made of the spiritual bamboo of Zhaimo Mountain had both the fragrance of the black bamboo and the holiness of the golden thread. Thousands of golden bamboo scrolls were wrapped in the light and flew to the sects in all corners of the world. That is, the golden bamboo scroll. The people in Tianyun Hall naturally couldn't have been unaware of how precious this golden bamboo scroll was. What was even more unimaginable was that there were actually thousands of such precious golden bamboo scrolls at this moment. They finally knew it until now. It turned out that the wedding that the Empress was talking about was not a whim, but a long-planned one.